In my past life, I waited for Prince Jing, Xiao Jingyuan, for 3 full days, from dawn till dusk, from hopeful anticipation to utter despair. It was the day he was supposed to come to ask for my hand in marriage, yet what arrived was his conspiracy with my younger half-sister, Shen Qingru. I was falsely accused of treason and colluding with the enemy. My father was imprisoned, my elder brother died in battle, my mother hanged herself, and the entire Xiang family was executed. Finally, I was granted a cup of He Dianhong poison. As I lay dying, Xiao Jingyuan leaned close to my ear and sneered coldly, "Qingxi, I too have been reborn. This time around, you and the Shen family must make way for Qingru." When I opened my eyes again, I sat upon a pearwood chair in the main hall of the Prime Minister's residence, the searing pain of the poisoned wine still lingering on my fingertips. A servant's voice announced from outside the door, "His Highness Prince Jing has arrived." My heart lurched violently. Suppressing the metallic taste in my throat, I lifted my gaze toward the doorway. Xiao Jingyuan stood in a moon-white brocade robe, his features as gentle as ever, exactly as he had been before proposing marriage in my previous life. But I knew him too well. I knew the barely perceptible scheming in the depths of his eyes, and the fleeting hint of apprehension that flashed when he saw me. He had reincarnated too, just as I had imagined. "Qingxi, I summoned you today to discuss urgent matters." Xiao Jingyuan sat down, his fingertips pausing slightly as he lifted his teacup, a habit he had when lying in our past life. I caught a slight chill the day before yesterday, delaying my visit. "I hope you won't hold it against me." I didn't respond to his words, only lifting my gaze indifferently. "Your Highness has a chill? Yet yesterday I saw you sipping tea with Sister Qingru at the tea house on West Street. Is your Highness's cold so mild it allows you to enjoy the breeze in tea?" Xiao Jingyuan's expression changed instantly. In my previous life, he used a cold as an excuse to fob me off. Only after my death did I learn from the jailer about his secret meetings with Shen Qingru. He must be shocked and suspicious now. How could I know this? "Qingxi, what are you implying?" He forced himself to remain composed, yet his voice betrayed a hint of panic. My encounter with Qingru was merely coincidental, and besides... Besides what? I cut him off, my fingertips tapping lightly on the tabletop. My voice was quiet but icy. "Your Highness seems to have forgotten that the proprietor of the West Street Tea House is a distant relative of my maternal family. Your whereabouts yesterday were already reported to me." This was improvised, yet it struck precisely at his weak point. After his rebirth, he surely assumed I remained as naive as in my previous life, unaware I had long seen through every one of his schemes. Xiao Jingyuan clenched his teacup, knuckles turning white. He opened his mouth to protest, but I rose, stepped before him, leaned close to his ear, and whispered in a voice only we could hear, "Your Highness, rebirth is no small feat. Why rush to ruin your future?" Xiao Jingyuan stiffened, snapping his head up to stare at me, his eyes filled with shock and murderous intent. That look was identical to the one he'd given me when he poisoned my wine in my previous life. I straightened up, took 2 steps back, picked up the teacup from the table, and sipped it. Then, as if by accident, I said, "Your Highness, if you came today to discuss marriage, there's no need to mention it. The husband of Shen Qingxi absolutely cannot be someone who hides his whereabouts from me." "Qingxi." Xiao Jingyuan rose, reaching out to pull me toward him, but I sidestepped him. "Your Highness, please restrain yourself." My tone was icy. Though the Prime Minister's residence may not match the power of the Prince of Jing's estate, it will not tolerate others' insolence. I can pretend today's incident never happened, but should it occur again, do not blame me for disregarding past ties. Just then, Shen Qingru's sweet voice drifted in from outside the door. "Sister, is Prince Jing here too? I just got some new peach blossom pastries and brought them especially for you to try." Shen Qingru lifted the curtain and entered. Sensing the tense atmosphere in the hall, she paused briefly before flashing her usual delicate smile and placing the pastries on the table. "Sister, I made these myself. Please try them." I glanced at the plate of pastries. In my previous life, it was these very pastries, laced with something by Shen Qingru, that caused me to lose my composure at the betrothal banquet, giving Xiao Jingyuan the excuse to break off the engagement. Seeing Shen Qingru enter, Xiao Jingyuan seized the opportunity to speak up. "Qingru's arrival is perfect timing. I was just telling your sister that I was in the wrong about the incident the other day." Shin Qingru glanced at Xiao Jingyuan, a flicker of doubt crossing her eyes. She then turned to me, her tone tinged with hurt. Sister, has the prince done something to upset you? Please don't be angry. I'll apologize on his behalf. I picked up a peach blossom pastry but didn't eat it. Instead, I held it to my nose and sniffed. Then, suddenly, I flung it to the floor. The porcelain plate shattered, pastries scattering everywhere. Shin Qingru's face instantly paled. Xiao Jingyuan's expression also darkened. Qingxi, what do you mean by this? I didn't look at them, only staring at the broken porcelain on the floor as I slowly spoke. This peach blossom pastry has a strange smell. I fear it's been contaminated by something unclean. It's unfit to eat. Shin Qingru's eyes reddened, brimming with tears. Sister, I made these myself. How could they be tainted? I lifted my gaze, fixing her with a direct stare before sweeping it over Xiao Jingyuan, whose face had turned ashen. A cold curve touched my lips. Whether they're tainted or not, your highness and my sister surely know the truth in your hearts, don't you? After Xiao Jingyuan led Shin Qingru away, I turned and returned to my Tinglan courtyard. The moment I stepped into the inner chamber, my gaze fell upon the rosewood box at the far left of the dressing table. Inside lay my mother's keepsake, a phoenix-patterned jade hairpin. It was the coming-of-age gift my maternal grandfather had bestowed upon my mother, a symbol of her status as the Shin family's legitimate daughter. In my previous life, Shin Qingru had stolen this hairpin while I was paying respects to grandmother. She then falsely accused me of losing it before father, resulting in my confinement for half a month. This allowed her to gain father's pity and seize the opportunity to demand many of mother's old belongings. I walked over and opened the wooden box. The jade hairpin gleamed with a warm, milky white luster, its phoenix beak inlaid with a tiny ruby. My fingertips brushed the hairpin's surface as I drew a small pinch of ambergris powder from my sleeve. This was the fragrance mother cherished most in life, kept only in my possession, no one else could have it. I sprinkled the powder gently into the crevices of the wooden box, then placed the jade hairpin back inside. Closing the lid, I deliberately left a barely perceptible gap. With everything arranged, I smoothed my robe and headed to grandmother's show and hall. Grandmother. I curtsied in greeting. Seeing her holding a Buddhist scripture, I stood respectfully by her side with hands at my sides. Grandmother glanced up at me and set down the scriptures. I heard all about the commotion Prince Jing caused earlier. You handled it correctly. A legitimate daughter of the Shin family has no need for a prince who breaks his word. I bowed my head in acknowledgement, then casually added, Grandmother, I found Mother's phoenix-patterned jade hairpin today. Since it was a gift from our maternal grandfather, it holds special meaning. I'd like to invite you to Tinglan Courtyard to see it, and to keep watch over Mother's belongings. Grandmother cherished Mother above all. At these words, she rose immediately. Come, I shall go and see. I knew exactly what was happening. Timing it perfectly, Shin Qingru should have already entered my Tinglan courtyard. She'd always coveted my mother's belongings. Seeing me and Xiao Jingyuan turn against each other today, she'd surely assume I was distraught and seize the chance to strike. Sure enough, as soon as we reached the courtyard entrance, faint sounds drifted from the inner chambers. I exchanged a glance with grandmother, and we tiptoed in, lifting the curtain. Shin Qingru stood with her back to the entrance, one hand clutching the rosewood box, the other gripping the phoenix-patterned jade hairpin. Hearing the movement, she whipped around, her face instantly turning as pale as paper. Qingru, what are you doing in my room? My voice was low, yet it carried a bone-chilling coldness. Grandmother, witnessing this, slammed her cane onto the floor and roared, How dare you! A concubine's daughter stealing her elder sister's belongings, especially your aunt's heirlooms. Shin Qingru hastily hid the jade hairpin behind her back and knelt with a thud. Grandmother, sister, I didn't steal it. I saw the box wasn't closed properly and feared it would gather dust. I only wanted to store it safely for you. Store it safely? I walked slowly toward her, crouched down, and pointed to the speckled traces of incense powder on her skirt hem. This dragon's saliva incense was only sprinkled into the box's crevices. If you were merely helping to store the box, how did it end up on your skirt? Shin Qingru looked down and saw the incense dust clearly visible on her skirt. She was instantly speechless, her eyes welling up again as she tried to play the victim once more. I just accidentally brushed against it. Sister, you can't accuse me based on a little incense dust. Accuse? Grandmother stepped forward, snatching the jade hairpin she'd concealed behind her back. This pin is in your grasp, you're caught red-handed. And you still dare to argue. Have the Shin family's rules been fed to the dogs? Can't you even tell the difference between legitimate and illegitimate, between high and low? Shin Chingru trembled under the scolding, yet refused to give up. She lifted her eyes to me, venom flashing in them. Sister, you must have set this trap for me. You knew I coveted Mother's heirlooms and deliberately lured me here. Does coveting give you the right to steal? I cut her off, straightening up. My gaze swept over her, icy cold. Mother's keepsakes belong to the legitimate branch of the Shin family. How dare a concubine's daughter covet them? If you dare steal a hairpin today, will you covet the position of legitimate daughter tomorrow? Covet the title of princess consort of Prince Jing? These words struck Shin Qingrou's deepest wound. She snapped her head up, her voice shrill. I want it. Why should you get everything good just because you were born the legitimate daughter? Prince Jing should have been mine, and this jade hairpin should be mine too. Grandmother trembled with rage, raising her hand to strike her, but I gently stopped her. I looked at Shin Qingru, my tone calm yet carrying an undeniable weight of authority. Shin Qingru was still wailing when Father's voice suddenly echoed from outside the courtyard. What is this commotion? This racket is utterly disgraceful. Shin Qingru clung to it like a lifeline, throwing herself forward in tears. Father, sister has falsely accused me. She deliberately set me up. Father frowned at me. Before he could speak, I pointed at Shin Qingrou's skirt hem and picked up the rosewood box, revealing the incense shavings trapped in its crevices. Father, Mother's jade hairpin was nearly stolen by my sister. These dragon's breath incense shavings are irrefutable proof. How can you still believe her lies? Father examined the shavings, then glanced at Shin Qingrou's ashen face. His expression darkened as he barked at her. Do you know your wrongdoing? Shin Qingru was punished by Father to be confined in the Buddhist hall for 3 months, copying the family rules 30 times daily. As she was dragged away, weeping and sniveling, the hatred in her eyes could have poisoned a snake. I paid her no mind, instead helping grandmother back to Shoan Hall. After settling her in, I returned to Tinglan courtyard. No sooner had I sat down than a green-robed servant rushed in from outside the courtyard. He was the secret liaison for my maternal grandfather's merchant caravan. Spotting me, he immediately knelt. Miss Shin. Trouble. Our southbound caravan was ambushed at Qingling Valley. All the goods are gone, and 3 guards were lost. My fingertips paused. Not surprising. In my previous life, Xiao Jingyuan had intercepted my maternal grandfather's caravan at precisely this time. He claimed it was the work of bandits, but his true intent was to sever the Shin family's financial lifeline. After all, my maternal grandfather's salt and iron caravans were a crucial source of income for the Shin household. Back then, I was kept in the dark, believing it was merely an accident. Reflecting now, his actions after reincarnation were 2 days quicker than in my previous life. Did he leave any traces? I asked in a low voice. The servant pulled a shattered jade pendant from his bosom and handed it over. This fell from the bandits. The guards fought fiercely to retrieve it. It doesn't look like something bandits would carry. I took the pendant. The jade felt smooth and warm. Engraved upon it was half a black bird, the insignia of the Jing prince's secret guards. In my previous life, I had seen men around Xiao Jingyuan wearing it. It was indeed him. You may withdraw. To the outside world, report only that the caravan encountered a flash flood, the goods were destroyed. Do not mention it was a robbery. I stowed the jade pendant away, then drew a claw-patterned token from my sleeve. Take this to the Yongfeng warehouse in the western part of the city and find the warehouse master, Old Zhou. Tell him I need to investigate the location of the Jing prince's private storehouse. He must report back to me tonight. This token was left to me by my mother. Old Zhou served under her and has maintained the Shin family's covert networks across the capital's mansions all these years. I only recalled this connection after my rebirth and made contact just days ago. The servant withdrew after receiving his orders. I leaned back in my chair, my fingertips tapping the tabletop. If Xiao Jingyuan intends to cut off the Shin family's financial lifeline, then I shall sever his clandestine revenue streams first. His private storehouse holds ample ill-gotten silver and military equipment, contraband that must never see the light of day. Intercepting these goods will cause him considerable pain. By nightfall, old Zhou's report arrived. Xiao Jingyuan's secret storehouse lay hidden in an abandoned granary south of the city, guarded by only 5 shadow guards. Tonight, a new shipment of military equipment would be delivered there. I changed into agile attire and slipped unnoticed over the rear wall of the Prime Minister's residence. Guided by memories from my past life and old Zhou's directions, I evaded the night patrols and swiftly reached the abandoned granary in the city's south. Sure enough, only 5 shadow guards stood watch at the main gate. The western wall, however, had a gaping hole from years of neglect, just wide enough for one person to slip through. Crouching low, I crept over and scaled into the granary. Inside, numerous wooden crates were stacked high, some filled with silver ingots, others with bows, arrows, and crossbows. I drew a firelighter from my robe and retrieved several packets of saltpeter powder I'd prepared earlier. Scattering the powder across the granary's beams, pillars, and gaps between crates, I deliberately left a section near the silver ingots untouched. After completing these preparations, I crept back to the main gate, quietly disabling 2 hidden guards and taking their identification tokens. Then I circled around to the haystack outside the granary and lit the tinder box. The straw caught fire instantly, billowing thick smoke. The hidden guards inside the granary sensed something was wrong and rushed out to put out the fire. Seizing the opportunity, I slipped back into the granary, moved the wooden crate containing the silver ingots to the western gap, and slid it over the wall using the rope I had prepared earlier. Old Zhou had already arranged for someone to receive it there. By the time the hidden guards realized the silver ingots were missing from the granary, and attempted to pursue me, I had already scaled the surrounding wall. I tossed the 2 secret guard identification tokens onto the ground and left behind half of a jade pendant engraved with a black bird, the other half of the jade pendant the servant had found earlier that day. Then, I leaped down and vanished into the night. By the time I returned to the Prime Minister's residence, dawn was breaking. I changed back into my everyday clothes and had just sat down to sip my tea when commotion erupted outside. Soon after, Father rushed in, his expression grave. "Qingxi, we've just received word that Prince Jing's private treasury was burned last night, and a large quantity of silver ingots went missing. He suspects our Shin family is responsible and is heading to the Prime Minister's residence with his men." I set down my teacup, my expression unruffled. "Father, do not panic. He has no evidence. He's merely here to vent his anger." No sooner had the words left my mouth than Xiao Jingyuan burst in. Dressed in a black robe, his face was ashen. Several guards followed behind him. The moment he entered, he pointed at me. "Shin Qingxi, did you do this to my private treasury? Your Highness, what on earth are you talking about?" I rose, raising an eyebrow at him. "I remained within the mansion all last night. The servants can attest to that. As for your Highness, last night, the southern city granary burned down, and silver ingots vanished. I hear a badge from the Prince of Jing's secret guards was found at the scene. Instead of investigating the mole within your own ranks, you come to the Prime Minister's residence to lay blame. What is the logic behind this?" Xiao Jingyuan froze, clearly unprepared for my counterattack. His fists clenched. "Stop making excuses. Who else but your Shin family would oppose me?" I drew the half-broken blackbird jade pendant from my sleeve and tossed it before him. "Your Highness, examine this first. My maternal grandfather's caravan was recently ambushed, and we recovered this fragment, an exact match to the token from your residence. Now my caravan has lost its cargo, and your private treasury has lost silver ingots. Shouldn't we thoroughly investigate who is sowing discord between our 2 families?" Father picked up the jade, examined it, and his expression darkened. "Prince Jing, the Shin family has never wronged you. Why did you ambush our caravan? And now you come to my residence to make trouble? Do you think the Shin family is easy to bully?" Xiao Jingyuan stared at the jade on the floor, then at my composed expression. For a moment, he couldn't find words to counter. He knew the contents of that secret vault were illicit and dared not report it to the authorities. He could only swallow this silent humiliation. He fixed me with a gaze as fierce as a wolf's. "Shin Qingxi, Don't think you can outmaneuver me like this. I met his gaze, a faint smile curving my lips. Your Highness, you're mistaken. I merely protect myself. After all, no one wants their livelihood cut off for no reason, right? Xiao Jingyuan, silenced by my father's retort, could only leave in a huff with his men. Before departing, his eyes burned with a hatred that seemed to want to devour me alive. I paid it no mind. I instructed old Zhou to use part of the intercepted silver to cover the losses of my maternal grandfather's merchant caravan, while the remainder was discreetly sent to my grandfather's military camp at the frontier. After all, military power would be the true foundation of my standing in the years to come. 3 days later, an imperial edict arrived from the palace. The empress would host a flower-viewing banquet in the imperial garden, summoning all eligible noble ladies and princes in the capital to attend. My fingers grew heavy as I clutched the bright yellow decree. In my previous life, this very flower-viewing banquet had been the beginning of Shinqingrou's scheme against me. She would feign closeness to me, then accidentally slip and fall into the lotus pond, only to have her maidservant falsely accuse me of pushing her. When Xiao Jingyuan stepped in to uphold justice, I not only gained a reputation for being jealous and malicious but was also confined to the Prime Minister's residence, completely severing all ties with my maternal family. This lifetime, she intends to repeat the same trick. Well, I'll make her reap what she sows. Before the banquet, I deliberately chose a plain brocade gown, wearing no valuable jewelry. Only at my waist hung the sachets filled with insect-repelling powder, a secret formula left by my mother. When wet, it releases a faint fragrance and leaves traces on clothing, perfect as evidence. Upon reaching the imperial garden, I spotted Shinqingru from afar, dressed in dazzling finery and clinging to Xiao Jingyuan's side. As I approached, a flicker of smugness crossed her eyes before she shifted into a feigned, delicate demeanor, beckoning me, "Sister, come this way. The lotus blooms in this pond are at their most splendid." I walked over slowly. The empress was conversing with several noble ladies nearby, her gaze drifting my way with a hint of disdain. I understood her feelings well. The empress had always despised women who schemed in secret. Today would be the perfect opportunity for her to see Shinqingrou's true colors. "Sister, look at that twin-flowered lotus, how rare." Shinqingru leaned against the low railing by the lotus pond, deliberately edging closer to me. Her maid quietly shifted behind me, clearly waiting to catch us in the act. I instinctively stepped back half a pace, avoiding her touch. Shinqingru hadn't expected me to dodge. Her foot stumbled, and as she teetered on the edge of falling, she frantically reached out to grab my skirt. I was ready. I sidestepped while simultaneously hooking her shoe tip with my foot. With a splash, Shinqingru plunged straight into the lotus pond. The icy water instantly submerged her head. As she splashed frantically, calling for help, the maid shrieked, "Oh no!" The eldest miss pushed the second miss into the water. The outcry drew all eyes toward us. Xiao Jingyuan's expression darkened as he rushed forward, pointing an accusing finger at me. "Shin Qingzi! How dare you!" I smoothed my skirt hem and looked calmly at the maid. "Which eye of yours saw me push her?" I saw it with my own eyes." The maid stuck out her neck, yet her eyes darted nervously. By then, the matron attending the empress had hurried over, and the empress herself rose and approached. Her gaze swept over the disheveled Shinqingru before settling on me. "What exactly happened?" "Your Majesty," I replied calmly, removing the sachets from my waist. This servant's sachets contain insect-repelling powder left by my mother. It leaves a trace when wet. Earlier, my sister tugged at my skirt. Had I pushed her, the powder from the pond water would have stained my skirt. Yet, there are clear traces of the powder on her sleeve, proof she lost her footing and fell in after failing to pull me. The matron immediately inspected the evidence. Sure enough, traces of the powder were found on Shinqingrou's wet sleeve, while my skirt remained spotless. The maid fell silent, her face turning ashen. Shinqingru was pulled ashore, shivering uncontrollably from the cold. Yet she refused to concede defeat, wailing, "Your Majesty, my sister pushed me. She resents my closeness to your Highness and deliberately pushed me." "Oh." The Empress raised an eyebrow, turning to Xiao Jingyuan. "Prince Jing, tell us, how close are you to the Shin family's second daughter that your elder sister harbors such resentment?" Xiao Jingyuan stiffened. He always sought to maintain a proper image before the empress, yet now he was rendered speechless. Your Majesty, this servant and Qingru are merely ordinary cousins. Ordinary cousins? The empress laughed coldly, her gaze settling on Qingru. Second Miss Shin, I see your thoughts are far from admiring the flowers. A concubine's daughter from the esteemed prime minister's household, instead of behaving properly within the manor, dares to frame her elder sister and climb onto a prince's coattails? What kind of behavior is this? Qingru turned deathly pale under the empress's words, unable to cry any longer. Her father hurried forward to plead for mercy. Your Majesty, please calm your anger. It is my failure as a father. I shall discipline her properly upon returning home. Standing to the side, I watched Qingru's disheveled state without a flicker of emotion. She brought this upon herself. Debts from a past life must be repaid, bit by bit. Seeing the empress's anger, Xiao Jingyuan dared not defend Qingru. He could only bow his head and say, Your Majesty is right. I failed in my duty. The empress swept her gaze over the assembled crowd, finally resting it on me. Her tone softened slightly. Miss Shin, you remain composed. This farce has not shaken your poise. I have taken note of today's events. You may all withdraw. Miss Shin may return to her residence to recuperate. Henceforth, she is to refrain from stirring up trouble. As Qingru was supported by her maidservant and passed by me, she gritted her teeth and hissed, Qingxi, I will not let you off. I gave her a faint glance, meeting the empress's probing gaze. I gave a slight nod in acknowledgement, but the empress suddenly spoke, calling me to stay. After the crowd dispersed, the empress signaled for me to follow her to the warm pavilion on the western side of the imperial garden. As soon as we entered, she dismissed the attendants. Tapping her fingertips on the tabletop, she cut straight to the point, Qingxi, you are no simple woman. I lowered my gaze and bowed, neither denying nor confirming, Your Majesty flatters me. This humble servant merely wishes to avoid unjust accusations. Refusing to be wronged is one thing, having prepared evidence of the poison powder beforehand is quite another. The empress lifted her teacup, her gaze sharp. Xiao Jingyuan is ambitious. These years, he has secretly cultivated court officials, coveting military power. I have long seen through him. Your Shin family is loyal and virtuous, and you are kin to this empress through marriage. I do not wish to see you fall victim to his schemes. She drew a gilded token from her sleeve and slid it toward me. Take this. Should urgent matters arise henceforth, you may enter the palace directly to see me, or even the emperor himself. My heart stirred. The empress was openly seeking to ally with the Shin family to counterbalance Xiao Jingyuan. I thanked her and accepted the token, tucking it into my sleeve. This humble maiden thanks Your Majesty for your care toward the Shin family. There is no need to thank me. I am merely protecting myself. The empress said indifferently. Xiao Jingyuan will surely seek revenge after today's humiliation. You must be cautious. If you need anything, send word. Upon leaving the palace, I sensed something amiss on my way home. Imperial guards surrounded the mansion gates, and a grim atmosphere hung over the estate. No sooner had I entered than the steward rushed in, breathless, Miss Shin. Trouble! Prince Jing has joined forces with the censor to accuse father of colluding with the northern barbarians. The emperor has sent men to search the study. My footsteps halted. So it had come. In my previous life, Xiao Jingyuan used forged letters of treason to have my father imprisoned in the heavenly prison, leaving him no chance of redemption. This time, he dared to use the same trick again. I rushed into the study to find several guards ransacking the place. Father stood nearby, his face ashen yet his back still straight. Xiao Jingyuan stood by the window, a smug smile playing on his lips. Qingxi, you arrived just in time. Xiao Jingyuan turned to face me, waving a letter in his hand. Here lies the irrefutable proof of your father's collusion with the northern barbarians. What do you think His Majesty will do to the Shin family? I didn't look at the letter, only glancing at the study's chaos before coldly replying, Your Highness claims this is evidence of treason. Have you verified the letter's handwriting and wax seal? Naturally, Xiao Jingyuan sneered. This is the Northern D envoy's own handwriting, bearing your father's private seal. How could it be fake? Whether it's fake or not isn't for you to decide. I drew the gilded token the Empress had given me from my sleeve and presented it to the guards. I bear the Empress's token. I must enter the palace to present evidence to His Majesty personally. Who dares stop me? The guards, seeing the token, immediately halted their actions and exchanged glances. Xiao Jingyuan's expression darkened. Shin Qingzi, stop using the Empress to intimidate people. What evidence could you possibly have? Your Highness, have patience. All will be revealed before His Majesty. I ignored him and turned to father. Father, rest assured. Your daughter will clear your name. Though puzzled by my possession of the Empress's token, father nodded. I have walked upright and sat with dignity. I fear no investigation. When we entered the palace to see the emperor, he sat in the imperial study, his expression dark. Xiao Jingyuan knelt first, presenting the letter. Your Majesty, this is irrefutable proof of Chancellor Shin's collusion with the northern barbarians. I implore your Majesty to punish him severely and uphold the law. The emperor picked up the letter and glanced at me. Shin Qingzi, your father is accused of treason. What do you have to say? Your Majesty, I possess evidence proving this letter is forged. Moreover, it is His Royal Highness Prince Jing who secretly colludes with court officials and plots treason. Kneeling and kowtowing, I drew a stack of secret letters and an account book from my sleeve, holding them high. Guards presented the items to the emperor. As he opened the secret letters, his expression darkened. The ledger clearly documented bribes Xiao Jingyuan had paid to the Marquis of Jinbei over the past half-year, along with their discussions on dividing border military authority. These were uncovered by old Zhou some days ago. The Marquis of Jinbei hails from the maternal clan of Xiao Jingyuan's late consort. The two have long colluded in secret. I intended to keep these for future use, but unexpectedly, they serve their purpose today. Xiao Jingyuan. The emperor slammed the secret letter onto the floor. You have the audacity to collude with the Marquis of the Northern Frontier in coveting military power, and to forge letters framing loyal officials. Do you even acknowledge this throne? Xiao Jingyuan turned deathly pale and hastily kowtowed. Your Majesty, this is slander. Shin Qingzi forged it. Forged? I sneered coldly. The handwriting on these secret letters belongs to the Northern Frontier Marquis's personal guard. The ledger also bears the seal of his trading house. If your Highness doubts this, summon the Marquis's guard to confront the evidence. Moreover, father's private seal was lost last month. Servants in the mansion can attest to this. The seal on these letters is clearly a counterfeit carved by your Highness. No sooner had I finished speaking than the Empress entered the imperial study. Bowing, she said, Your Majesty, I too heard from Lady Shin that the Chancellor's private seal was lost. Moreover, the Marquis of Jinbei has been making frequent moves along the frontier recently, showing clear signs of amassing troops for personal power. The secret correspondence with Prince Jing is certainly not forged. The emperor, already wary of Xiao Jingyuan's ambitions, now faced irrefutable proof and was consumed by rage. Guards. Confine Prince Jing to his mansion. He shall not leave without my command. Strip him of his military authority. Conduct a thorough investigation into the Marquis of the Northern Frontier. Minister Shin has been framed. Restore his honor immediately. Withdraw all guards from his residence. Xiao Jingyuan collapsed to the floor, staring at me in disbelief, his eyes filled with venom. Shin Qingzi, you schemed against me. I didn't look at him, only bowed to the emperor. Your servant thanks your Majesty for clearing my father's name. The emperor sighed, looking at me and saying, You girl, you're more cunning than your father. From now on, the Shin family will likely rely on you to hold things together. After leaving the imperial study, Xiao Jingyuan was escorted past me by guards. He lowered his voice, gritting his teeth. Shin Qingzi, the humiliation I suffered today, I will repay 100-fold. I paused, turning my head to look at him, my tone flat yet laced with bone-chilling coldness. Your Highness, perhaps you should focus on your own situation first. After all, your days under house arrest are unlikely to be brief. With Xiao Jingyuan confined to the mansion and the Marquis of Jinbei under thorough investigation, the Shin family finally found temporary stability. Though father's reputation was restored, the turmoil of recent days had left him deeply troubled and bedridden. Each day, after administering father's medicine, I scrutinized intelligence reports from old Zhou, guarding against any counterattack from Xiao Jingyuan's remaining followers. That evening, just as I returned from my father's quarters, a soft knock sounded at Tinglan Courtyard's gate. Opening it, I found Qingqing maid holding a bowl of silver ear fungus soup. "Miss," she said, "second miss mentioned your recent exhaustion and specially prepared this soup to nourish you." I glanced at the bowl. Steam rose from it, carrying a faint, peculiar fragrance. In my previous life, Qingqing had used sweet soup laced with love potion to scheme against me, trying to force me into a relationship with a street thug and ruin my reputation. Now that Xiao Jingyuan had fallen from power, she dared to take such a desperate risk. It seemed the successive defeats had driven her mad. I didn't take the bowl, merely replying coolly, "My sister is thoughtful, but I've just returned from father's quarters and already had ginseng soup. I'm afraid I can't manage anymore." The young maid looked troubled. "But the second young miss specifically instructed that you must be seen drinking it." "Oh." I raised an eyebrow, stepping aside to let her in. "Then place it on the table. I'll drink it after resting a while." The maid set down the bowl, exchanged a few more polite words, then hurried away. I walked to the table, dipped my fingertip into the soup, and brought it to my nose. Sure enough, it carried the scent of an aphrodisiac, though its potency was stronger than the one from my previous life. I let out a cold laugh, pulling a small porcelain vial from my sleeve. Inside was the sleeping potion I'd prepared earlier. It would only induce drowsiness without clouding the mind, perfect for a switch. I poured the silver ear soup into a fresh porcelain bowl, dissolved the sleeping potion into it, and returned it to the tray. Then I stashed the bowl containing the love potion into the food box. Calculating the timing, Qingqing would surely send someone to catch the adulterers in the act. And the lover she'd chosen was undoubtedly the concubine-born son of the Deputy Minister of Personnel who'd visited the Prime Minister's residence just days ago, a man notoriously lustful, surely bribed by Qingqing. Sure enough, half an hour later, the faint patter of footsteps reached me from outside the courtyard. I deliberately blew out the lamp, leaving only the moonlight filtering through the window crack, then hid behind the screen. The door burst open as Qingqing stormed in with several servants, followed by the concubine-born son of the Minister of Personnel. Holding the lantern aloft, she triumphantly shouted, "Sister, there's no need to hide. I saw everything, you and this young master." Her words trailed off as she froze. The table was empty except for the bowl of silver ear fungus soup. The concubine's son, drawn by its aroma, had picked it up and drunk most of it. Moments later, his body went limp, and he collapsed onto the floor. Qingqing's expression darkened. "What happened? Where is he?" I stepped out from behind the screen, clapped my hands to relight the lamp. Was my sister looking for me? Or for this young master who drank the drugged soup? Qingqing glanced at the dazed concubine's son on the floor, then at the empty porcelain bottle in my hand. Realization struck instantly. "You switched the soup. Qingqing, you've schemed against me again." "Schemed?" I sneered coldly, flinging the half-finished bowl of silver ear fungus soup at her feet. "This potion laced with aphrodisiacs, didn't you stew it yourself? Had I not been prepared, I would be the one disgraced today." The commotion drew the household servants, and father was hurried over, supported by attendants. His face turned ashen at the sight. The concubine-born son of the Vice Minister of Personnel lay dazed by the potion, muttering incoherently. Qingqing's maid, terrified, knelt and revealed Qingqing's entire scheme. The Vice Minister's household arrived swiftly. Seeing their son in this state and hearing the full story, they were so enraged they demanded to report it to the authorities immediately. Qingqing collapsed onto the ground, wailing, "Father, I didn't mean to. Qingqing framed me." "Framed?" Her father raised his hand and struck her across the face, a thin trickle of blood appearing at the corner of her mouth. "You have repeatedly slandered your elder sister, and now you seek to ruin her reputation? Do you still regard me as your father? Do you still honor the name of the Shin family?" The wife of the Minister of Rights pointed at Qingqing, furious. "Your Excellency, this concubine-born daughter of yours is wicked. If it were my son who ruined her reputation today, that would be one thing. But now my son is the one suffering. This cannot be let go." Just then, the matron sent by the Empress arrived. She had come to deliver tonic herbs to father and happened upon the scene. The matron surveyed the scene and said gravely, "Minister, this scandal risks tarnishing the Shin family's reputation. It would be best to confine the second young lady to her quarters first. I shall then report to Her Majesty the Empress Dowager for her final decision." At the mention of the Empress Dowager's judgment, Shin Qingru panicked completely. She lunged forward, grabbing my skirt hem. "Sister! I was wrong. Please spare me this once. I'll never dare again." I shook off her hand, my gaze icy. "When you harmed me, did you ever consider sparing me?" Father sighed and ordered the servants, "Confine the second young miss to the woodshed. She is not to leave without my command. Return this illegitimate son to the Minister of Right's residence and prepare generous gifts as an apology." As Shin Qingru was dragged away, she continued wailing and cursing. The men from the vice minister's residence departed with the illegitimate son, finally restoring quiet to the mansion. Father looked at me, his expression complex. "Qingxi, I failed you. I did not raise her properly." I shook my head. "Father, you need not blame yourself. She chose her own path." Just then, the steward rushed in with news. Her Majesty the Empress had issued an edict, ordering Shin Qingru to be sent to a nunnery outside the city, never to return to the capital. Father paused, then bowed in acknowledgement. I stepped outside the courtyard, gazing toward the woodshed under the moonlight. Shin Qingru's cries still faintly echoed from within. Just then, a matron sent by the Empress approached me and whispered, "Young miss, Her Majesty says one must uproot the weeds to prevent future troubles." I looked at the matron and spoke slowly. "I understand the Empress's intentions. But life in that nunnery must be worse than death, wouldn't you say?" On the second day after Shin Qingru was sent to the nunnery, I went outside the city to see her off for the last time. Through the wooden gate of the nunnery, I could only hear her hoarse curses, but I didn't even get to see her face. The matron was right, one must uproot the weed to prevent regrowth. Yet watching her waste away in seclusion brings far greater satisfaction than ending her with a single stroke. Upon returning to the manor, old Zhou delivered a secret letter that very night. It revealed that though confined, Xiao Jingyuan had secretly contacted the Shadow Pavilion in the martial arts world. They had dispatched their top assassin to the capital, targeting me directly. My fingers turned white as I clutched the letter. In my past life, it was on the very path to fetch medicine for my father that I was gravely wounded by Shadow Pavilion agents. 3 months bedridden cost me the crucial window to rescue him. This lifetime, he dared attempt the same trick again. I kept it quiet, instructing old Zhou only to uncover the assassin's background. 2 days later, intelligence arrived. The assassin was known as Ah Qi, the Shadow Pavilion's top-tier hitman. Yet he had a weakness. His sister was held captive in Xiao Jingyuan's mansion, used as leverage to force his loyalty. A plan formed in my mind, and I resolved to set the trap myself. 3 days later, I left the city alone under the pretext of delivering medicinal herbs to my maternal grandfather's military camp. As the carriage approached a dilapidated temple on the outskirts, it was indeed intercepted. A dark figure darted through the wind, a dagger thrusting toward the carriage curtain. Prepared for this, I flung open the curtain, flipped over the side, and leapt down, evading the fatal strike. The assailant was none other than Ah Qi, clad in black, face concealed, eyes cold and fierce. Yet upon seeing me, his movements faltered momentarily. "Miss Shin certainly has courage," he remarked. "Knowing someone sought to kill you, you still dared to leave the city alone." Ah Qi's voice was hoarse, his grip on the dagger tightening. I steadied myself, leaving the soft sword at my waist sheathed, and spoke calmly, "The top assassin of the Shadow Pavilion, risking your life for Xiao Jingyuan? Not afraid of meeting the same fate, being silenced?" Ah Qi's expression shifted. "How do you know my identity? Xiao Jingyuan holds your sister hostage, forcing you to kill me. Once the deed is done, do you think he'll release her?" I didn't answer his question, instead striking at the heart of the matter. He frames loyal officials and discards his own blood-related cousin like a worn-out shoe. Do you truly believe he'll honor a promise to a mere martial artist? Ah Qi's dagger wavered, his eyes flickering with conflict. "I have no choice. My sister is in his hands. You do have a choice." I drew a jade pendant from my sleeve and tossed it to him. "This is the Empress's token. With it, you can enter the Imperial Guard's dungeon and rescue her. I've confirmed it. Your sister isn't at Prince Jing's mansion at all. He's secretly imprisoned her in the old Imperial Guard dungeon. He's waiting for you to kill me so he can silence you. Achi caught the jade, fingertips tracing its gilded patterns as he weighed the offer. I continued, I can help rescue your sister. The condition is you go before the Emperor and reveal everything, how Xiao Jingyuan hired you to assassinate me, how he secretly stockpiled weapons for rebellion. How could I produce evidence of rebellion? Achi growled. You need no proof. Simply repeat what he confided to you in private. I sneered. The Emperor already harbors suspicion toward him. Once you speak, his trust will be irretrievably lost. Achi remained silent for a long while before finally sheathing his dagger and kneeling on one knee. I'll trust you this once. If you deceive me, I'll pursue you to the death. I helped him up. I, Shinqingzi, never speak empty words. Now, accompany me to the Imperial Guard prison to retrieve your sister, then enter the palace with me. At the Imperial Guard prison, I had already made arrangements using the Empress's token. He successfully retrieved his sister. Seeing his sister safe and sound, the ferocity in He's eyes dissipated considerably, and he became utterly convinced of my trustworthiness. When we entered the palace to see the Emperor, he had just concluded the case against the Marquis of Jinbei and was already in a foul mood. Achi knelt in the hall and recounted every detail, how Xiao Jingyuan had blackmailed him, ordered him to assassinate me, and privately complained about the Emperor's suspicion, even threatening to establish a new realm. The Emperor's expression darkened with each word. He slammed his fist on the dragon-carved desk. Treason. Treason indeed. Before I could punish him, he dared plot murder and even slanderously discussed rebellion. Xiao Jingyuan was swiftly brought before the throne. His expression twisted violently upon seeing Achi, and he roared, "You rebel! How dare you slander this prince?" Slander? Achi produced a jade pendant, the very token Xiao Jingyuan had given him. This is the token His Highness gave me. He also said that once Miss Shen was killed, he would appoint me commander of the Imperial Guards to aid his cause. Is this also slander? Xiao Jingyuan clenched his fists, speechless. The Emperor turned to him, his eyes brimming with disappointment and murderous intent. Xiao Jingyuan, you colluded with the Marquis of Jinbei, framed loyal officials, and now hire assassins and plot rebellion. What more can you say? Your Majesty, Shinqingzi bribed him. She set me up. Xiao Jingyuan clung to his dying breath, his gaze fixed on me. Bribed? I stepped forward. Your Highness, if you hadn't committed these acts, how could anyone bribe you? Besides, you held Achi's sister captive, what reason would he have to aid me? The Emperor dismissed his excuses and ordered directly, Castle Jing is to be imprisoned in the heavenly dungeon. Search his estate thoroughly. Any evidence of treason must be presented immediately. As Xiao Jingyuan was dragged away, he raved like a madman, still screaming my name. The chamber fell silent once more. The Emperor turned to me, his tone complex. Shinqingzi, you have repeatedly averted crises and even uncovered Xiao Jingyuan's treasonous plots. You possess both courage and wisdom. Henceforth, the Shin family shall be under your care. I bowed in gratitude. No sooner had I stepped out of the imperial study than I saw the Empress's matron waiting for me. She handed me a brocaded box and whispered, Miss Shin, the Empress says this is a gift for you. Also, she's already made arrangements at the imperial prison. Xiao Jingyuan won't be too comfortable in there. I took the box and opened it. Inside lay a translucent jade hairpin, the very one my mother had lost years ago. I looked at the matron and spoke slowly, please convey my gratitude to Her Majesty. The Shin family remembers this kindness. Holding my mother's jade hairpin, I returned to the Prime Minister's residence. As soon as I stepped into Tinglan courtyard, old Zhou hurried in, clutching a wax-sealed letter. His expression was grave, young miss, an urgent dispatch from the frontier, sent by the old general. I tore open the wax-sealed letter, my fingers clenching instantly. The letter made it clear, though Xiao Jingyuan had been imprisoned in the heavenly dungeon, he had long prepared a contingency. His remaining followers had secretly contacted Wei Yan, a subordinate general under my maternal grandfather's command. They promised Wei Yan high office and generous rewards, urging him to turn his former troops against my maternal grandfather and seize control of the northern frontier army. In my previous life, Wei Yan was the one Xiao Jingyuan turned against us. At the most critical moment of battle, he defected, causing my maternal grandfather's defeat and capture. The northern frontier army was left leaderless, and ultimately, Xiao Jingyuan seized control of the military power. The Shin family lost its last pillar of support. This time around, he dares to repeat the same old scheme. Have you thoroughly investigated Wei Yan's background? I crumpled the secret letter in my hand and asked in a deep voice. We have, old Zhou nodded. Wei Yan is a distant nephew by marriage of General Lu Yuan of the western frontier. He was recommended by General Lu to join the northern frontier army years ago. Moreover, General Lu's eldest son was framed by Xiao Jingyuan 3 years ago and exiled to a harsh, frigid region. General Lu has harbored deep resentment toward Xiao Jingyuan ever since. I understood. The General of the West commands the Western Army, forming a strategic pincer with my maternal grandfather's Northern Army. Winning Lu Yuan's allegiance would not only secure my grandfather's military authority but also sever Xiao Jingyuan's supply lines entirely. Go to the armory. Take the weapons we intercepted last time, count them out, and send them overnight to my grandfather's camp at the frontier. Tell them it's provisions I'm sending to the soldiers. I paused, then drew 2 tokens from my sleeve, one the gilded imperial token from the Empress, the other a fragment of the northern garrison's tiger token left to me by my maternal grandfather in his later years. Take these 2 items to the General of the West's residence. Tell him I hold the key to saving his eldest son, and urge him to join forces with my maternal grandfather to take down Wei Yan. Old Zhou took his leave to carry out the orders. I then picked up my brush and wrote 2 personal letters, one to my maternal grandfather, exposing Wei Yan's treasonous intentions and urging him to first stabilize the troops' morale, the other to Lu Yuan, detailing the evidence of Xiao Jingyuan's frame up against his eldest son and the advantages and disadvantages of joining forces. 3 days later, news arrived from the frontier. Old Zhou had not only successfully delivered the weapons but also, using the tokens and letters, persuaded Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan personally led troops to surround Wei Yan's camp. My maternal grandfather, having prepared defenses in advance, immediately seized secret correspondence between Wei Yan and remnants of Xiao Jingyuan's faction. Caught red-handed, Wei Yan was captured without a single casualty. Yet I knew this was insufficient. Xiao Jingyuan's loyalists remained hidden within the army, and the morale of the northern frontier army required thorough consolidation. Without waiting for my father or grandmother to dissuade me, I claimed I was visiting my maternal grandfather and set off alone with 2 guards, galloping swiftly toward the frontier. Upon reaching the northern frontier army camp, I arrived just as my maternal grandfather was dealing with Wei Yan at the gate. Outside the tent, soldiers stood densely packed. Wei Yan, bound to a wooden stake, was still screaming, "Old General! I'm innocent! Shin Qingzi framed me!" I dismounted swiftly, approached Wei Yan, and flung a sealed letter at his face. Framed? This is your correspondence with Xiao Jingyuan's remnants plotting an inside-outside attack. The handwriting is yours, the seal is your forgery, and you still dare to deny it? Wei Yan stared at the letter on the ground, his voice instantly silenced as he collapsed limp to the earth. My maternal grandfather, seeing me arrive, was both shocked and delighted. Why have you come? The capital has only just stabilized. This place is far too dangerous. My grandfather's safety matters more than the capital's stability. I looked out at the soldiers gathered outside the tent and called out in a loud voice, "Soldiers, Xiao Jingyuan's treason has been crushed, and he has been thrown into the heavenly prison." Wei Yan was his pawn. Seizing Wei Yan today is to protect the loyal spirit of the Northern Frontier Army and safeguard the peace of our border. My Shin family has delivered all intercepted military supplies. Henceforth, as long as the Shin family endures, the Northern Frontier Army's soldiers shall never be shortchanged. The soldiers had already sensed Wei Yan's treacherous intentions. Hearing my words and learning of the supply replenishment, they erupted in cheers, their morale completely steadied. Lu Yuan arrived shortly after. Seeing me, he bowed and said, "Miss Shin truly keeps her word. I've received word that His Majesty, having reviewed the evidence you presented, has issued an edict recalling my son." "General Lu is too kind," I replied, returning his bow. "Joining forces against our enemy is simply our duty. Xiao Jingyuan's remnants still linger. The northern frontier and western frontier armies must watch over each other to completely crush his ambitions. Over the next few days, I accompanied my maternal grandfather and Lu Yuan on inspections of the military camps. Drawing on memories from my past life, I pointed out several vulnerable defensive positions and suggested that the two armies share intelligence and grain supplies. My grandfather and Lu Yuan, who already admired my boldness, were now even more convinced of my capabilities. They immediately established an alliance to jointly resist external enemies and guard against Xiao Jingyuan's counterattack. One day, as I was reviewing military defense maps in my tent, my maternal grandfather's deputy rushed in, his expression frantic. "Miss, news from the capital. Xiao Jingyuan has bribed the jailers in the imperial prison and sent word to his former men in the capital, ordering them to storm the prison." My pen paused, then I let out a cold laugh. He still hasn't given up. "Should we return to the capital immediately to provide support?" the deputy asked. "Unnecessary," I replied, setting down my brush with a flash of sharpness in my eyes. "The Empress and Father have their own plans in the capital. Our duty is to hold the frontier and sever his last hope. Besides," I added, "I've already had old Zhou lay the groundwork in the capital. His failed prison break will only expose all his former men." Just then, the sound of hoofs echoed outside the tent. Lu Yuan hurried in, holding a sealed letter. "Qingci, look! Xiao Jinyuan's old faction has indeed moved, but they were captured by the imperial guards just outside the capital. Even the jailers in the heavenly prison were wiped out along with them." I took the letter. It detailed clearly how old Zhou used silver from Xiao Jinyuan's private treasury as bait to lure out the old faction. The Empress then ordered the imperial guards to surround and arrest them, purging the remnants of his power in the capital in one fell swoop. My maternal grandfather studied the letter and exhaled deeply. Now, Xiao Jingyuan truly has no chance of recovery. I closed the letter and gazed out the window at the setting sun over the frontier. My tone was calm yet resolute. Just then, a scout galloped in, dismounted, and knelt, shouting, "General! Miss! An imperial edict has arrived. It decrees that all military authority of Xiao Jinyuan's former forces be transferred to the northern and western frontier armies. Furthermore, the imperial court appoints you as frontier military advisor, granting you access to military affairs of state." My maternal grandfather and Lu Yuan both froze, then turned their gaze to me. I took the imperial decree, rose, and addressed the scout, "Convey to His Majesty that this humble daughter shall not betray his trust. I shall guard these 10,000 miles of frontier." After half a month at the border, just as I had finalized the military defenses, an urgent secret letter from old Zhou arrived at the camp. The contents made my fingertips tremble slightly. Shinqingru, confined within the nunnery, had not remained quiet. She had secretly contacted the remnants of the salt merchant family that had been investigated by the Shin clan years ago. She had even produced a jade pendant engraved with the character for vengeance, vowing to slaughter the Shin family. I recognized that jade pendant. In my previous life, Shinqingru had clutched an identical jade pendant in her dying moments. Back then, I dismissed it as some random trinket she'd found, but now I realized it must hold the key to her origins. I immediately requested leave from my maternal grandfather, took 2 guards, and rode back to the capital at full gallop. Along the way, I instructed old Zhou to retrieve all the old case files from the Shin family's investigation into the salt merchant case. The salt merchant case was a major scandal a decade prior. The merchant had smuggled government salt and colluded with the northern barbarians. Father personally supervised the investigation, which ended with the entire family being executed. Shinqingru's mother, however, was the maid who had been bribed by the salt merchant to infiltrate the prime minister's residence. Later, for reasons unknown, she gained some of father's pity, which led to the birth of Shinqingru. The very next day after my return, as soon as I entered the mansion, I heard that the nunnery matron sought an audience. She said Shinqingru was demanding to see her father, claiming she was the Shin family's benefactor and not a concubine's daughter. I dismissed the matron and immediately went to my father's study, placing the files and secret letters old Zhou had organized on the desk. "Father, take a look at this." I pointed to a page in the dossier. 10 years ago, in the salt merchant case, the principal offender's concubine fled with her young son. Shinqingru's mother was a distant relative of that concubine. Her entry into the prime minister's residence was nothing but a ploy to seek revenge. Father picked up the dossier. His expression darkened with each page, his hands trembling. This can't be possible. Qin grew. And this jade pendant. I produced the jade pendant old Zhou had seized from Shinqingrou's residence. It matched the salt merchant family's heirloom described in the case file perfectly. All these years, her targeting of me and framing the Shin family weren't driven by jealousy over birth status, she was seeking vengeance for her kin. Before I could finish speaking, the steward arrived with news. Shin Qingru had broken free from the nunnery's custody and stormed to the front gates of the Prime Minister's residence. Accompanied by remnants of the salt merchant's former followers, she was shouting at the entrance, accusing the Shin family of ingratitude and mistreating their concubine-born daughter. Father and I hurried to the front hall to find Shin Qingru, hair disheveled yet eyes blazing with fury. She pointed at Father and screamed, "Chancellor Shin! You promised to protect my mother. Yet now you let Shin Qingci humiliate me. How can you face her spirit? Enough!" Father flung the case files before her. "Your mother was a remnant of the salt merchant faction. She infiltrated this mansion with ulterior motives. I even spared you out of lingering affection, yet you repeatedly framed the Shin family. What were you scheming?" Shin Qingru paled at the sight of the files but stubbornly retorted, "These are forged by Shin Qingci. She simply cannot tolerate me." "Forged?" I stepped forward, producing a silver locket. Old Zhou found this among her mother's old belongings. Engraved inside are your true birth date and the birth date of the salt merchant's youngest son, identical. Your mother merely adopted you, using you as a pawn for her vengeance. Do you still intend to shield her?" The lock clattered to the floor, revealing the tiny engraving within. The clan elders who had rushed over upon hearing the commotion stared in stunned silence. Shin Qingru staggered back 2 steps, her eyes fixed on the lock. Finally, she screamed like a madwoman, "So what if it is? Your Shin family exterminated my entire clan. My mother died in bitter resentment. What right do I not have to seek vengeance? Your kin rebelled and colluded with enemies, they deserved their deaths." Father trembled with rage. "The Shin family treated you well. We granted you the status of a legitimate daughter, clothed you in brocade and fed you delicacies. Yet you repay kindness with betrayal, conspiring with outsiders to destroy the Shin family. Do you even deserve to utter the word revenge? Brocade and delicacies?" Shin Qingrou's laughter turned bitterly sharp. "That was merely your Shin family's charity. Every day I watched your legitimate daughters bask in glory, gazed upon the relics my mother left behind, and seethed with hatred wishing you all dead. When Xiao Jingyuan offered aid, I joined forces with him. Had Shin Qingci not obstructed me at every turn, the Shin clan would have fallen long ago." These words laid bare her true intentions. The clan elders spoke in unison, "Minister, this girl must not be spared. She is the orphan of our enemies, her heart aligned with villains. Keeping her alive will only breed future troubles." I looked at Shin Qingru. The hatred in her eyes nearly overflowed, yet I felt not a shred of pity. Her clan deserved their fate, yet she redirected her vengeance onto the innocent Shin family. This was the path she chose herself. Shin Qingru, my voice was icy. Had your mother truly repented back then, the Shin family might have spared her. But she planted hatred within you, and you aided and abetted the enemy, colluding with Xiao Jingyuan to plot against the Shin family. Today, no one can protect you." Father closed his eyes briefly, his voice resolute, "Guards, seize Shin Qingru. Expel her from the Shin family. She is forever banned from setting foot within the capital. Should she dare approach the Prime Minister's residence again, kill her on sight." As Shin Qingru was dragged away by the servants, she still screamed my name, cursing me as cold-blooded and heartless. The clan elders breathed a sigh of relief, praising Father's decisive action. My gaze, however, fell upon the case files on the table. A case from 10 years ago still harbored such a hidden threat. Had I not been reborn, the Shin family would likely have been destroyed long ago by these two conspiring together. Father sank wearily into his chair and looked at me. "Qingci, if not for you, the Shin family would have truly fallen this time. Your father is sorry." I shook my head. "Father, you needn't blame yourself. This isn't your fault. It was their own wicked intentions, unrelated to the Shin family." Just then, old Zhou rushed in again, holding a sealed letter. Young miss, the nunnery discovered that the remnants of the salt merchant Shen Qingru had been in contact with were secretly directed by Xiao Jingyuan from within the imperial prison. He intends to use Shen Qingru to stir up chaos in the capital and seize an opportunity to make a comeback. I took the letter and let out a cold laugh. Xiao Jingyuan, even now, still scheming. He truly won't learn until he's at death's door. Father's eyes flashed with murderous intent as he read the letter. That Xiao Jingyuan. He truly shows no remorse even in death. I tucked the letter away and looked at father, speaking slowly. Father, rest assured. His good days are numbered. The news of Xiao Jingyuan's rebellion plot had been leaked 3 days prior by an insider within the imperial prison. I had long anticipated he would resort to desperate measures. After Shen Qingru's scheme was exposed, he lost all hope within the prison walls. He bribed the guards and contacted his remaining loyalists in the capital's outskirts, planning to seize the palace during the chaos of the imperial moon worship ceremony on the night of the full moon on the 15th day. These past 3 days, I've barely slept. While ordering old Zhou to reinforce defenses at every city gate, I dispatched messengers to my maternal grandfather at the frontier and to Luyuan, summoning 3,000 elite troops to enter the capital under cover of night. Disguised as imperial guards, they infiltrated the perimeter of the palace grounds. Simultaneously, bearing the Empress's token, I entered the palace to finalize security arrangements for the moon worship ceremony with Her Majesty, setting ambushes along every possible escape route Xiao Jingyuan might attempt. On the night of the 15th, under a silver moon, the moon worship ceremony commenced as scheduled in the imperial garden. The emperor sat upon the main throne, the empress by his side, while I remained concealed in the shadows, watching the surroundings. Just as midnight struck, the sound of battle erupted outside the palace gates. Instantly, flames shot skyward as Xiao Jingyuan, clad in black armor and leading hundreds of his former troops, breached the gates and charged straight toward the imperial garden. His face twisted with frenzied ferocity as he gripped his long sword and bellowed, "Your Majesty is blinded by folly. Today, I shall act as heaven's agent to restore order to the court." Officials scattered in terror. The imperial guards rushed to block him, but Xiao Jingyuan's men tore through their ranks. Just as he was about to reach the emperor, I leapt out from the shadows. My soft sword drew from its sheath, thrusting straight for his throat. "Xiao Jingyuan, your time has come." Xiao Jingyuan hadn't expected me here. He dodged sideways in haste, the sword tip slicing through his shoulder armor. Blood seeped out instantly. He glared at me, his eyes filled with venom. "Shen Qingzi. It's you again. Why must you always oppose me?" "I'm not opposing you, you've committed countless evils and brought this upon yourself." I swung my sword again, each strike vicious and relentless. "You framed loyal officials, murdered your own daughter, colluded with foreign enemies, plotted rebellion. Every single one of these crimes is enough to have your entire clan executed." As we fought, countless imperial guards suddenly surged from all sides, completely surrounding Xiao Jingyuan's former troops. My maternal grandfather and Lu Yuan arrived with elite troops. Lu Yuan bellowed, "Xiao Jingyuan. Your men are all captured. Surrender now." Xiao Jingyuan surveyed his situation, trapped like a turtle in a jar. Far from panicking, he laughed. A laugh that was both wretched and maniacal. "I've lost. I was reborn into this life, only to lose to you again, Shen Qingzi. But I refuse to accept this. In my past life, I could destroy the Shen family. Why should this life be any different? You succeeded last time because both I and the Shen family were too naive." I kicked him hard in the knee, forcing him to his knees. My soft sword pressed against his throat. "This time, I see your true colors. You'll never get another chance." Xiao Jingyuan tried to struggle, but I flung all the evidence of his collusion with the Marquis of Jinbei, his hiring of assassins, and his secret dealings with the remnants of the salt merchant clan right in his face. I shouted harshly, "This evidence is enough to have you executed by Ling Qi. Do you think your former subordinates can save you? They've long been turned by me. Today, they were merely pawns to lure you into this trap." Xiao Jingyuan stared at the scattered secret letters and tokens strewn across the floor, collapsing completely onto the ground, his eyes hollow. The emperor rose and stepped before him, his voice cold. "Xiao Jingyuan, I have treated you well. Yet you have repeatedly plotted rebellion. Today, I strip you of your imperial prince status and sentence you to Lingqi, to serve as a warning to others. Imperial guards dragged Xiao Jingyuan away. As he passed by me, he suddenly murmured, "Shenqingzi, you've been reborn too, haven't you?" I did not deny it, only replied indifferently, "So what if I am? I was reborn to protect the Shen family, while you were reborn to satisfy your ambition. We were never meant to walk the same path." The chaos of the grand ceremony soon subsided. The emperor looked at me, his eyes brimming with approval. "Shenqingzi, you have played a pivotal role in quelling this rebellion. Speak, what reward do you desire?" "This servant requests no reward." I bowed deeply. "I only ask that your majesty restore the Shen family's innocence and protect our lineage's reputation for generations of loyal service." The emperor laughed heartily. "Granted. From this day forward, the Shen family shall be the pillar safeguarding our great gene. I shall issue an edict proclaiming this to the realm, restoring justice to the Shen family." By the time I returned to the prime minister's residence, dawn was breaking. Father and grandmother were waiting in the hall. Seeing me return safely, grandmother took my hand, her eyes reddened. "My dear child, you've suffered so much." I shook my head, gazing at the rising sun beyond the window. The shadows that had weighed on my heart for years finally lifted. The blood feud of my past life was finally settled in this one. Just then, old Zhou hurried in, holding a letter. "Miss Shen, news has come from the nunnery. Shen Qingru, upon learning of Xiao Jingyuan's capture, lost all will to live and hanged herself last night." I froze for a moment, then sighed. Shen Qingru's life, consumed by hatred, had ultimately ended this way. Father looked at me, his tone relieved. "Qingzi, now that the great threat is gone and the Shen family is secure, you should start thinking about your own future." I smiled and walked into the courtyard, gazing at the pear tree. My mother had planted it herself before she passed away. Now, it stood lush and vibrant, its blossoms in full bloom. Just then, a matron sent by the Empress delivered an imperial decree. It stated the Empress intended to betroth me to the newly enfeoffed Marquis of Loyal Valor. I shook my head and told the matron, "Return my words to Her Majesty. Shenqingzi, in this life, desires only to protect the Shen family and guard these vast lands. Matters of the heart are but fleeting clouds to me." The matron paused, then bowed in acknowledgement. Father looked at me, puzzled. "Why refuse, child?" I turned to him, my eyes unwavering. "Father," I said slowly, "the future of the Shen family rests with me. I can weather this world's storms. Why must I depend on others?" The end.